welcome to this Tuesday edition of FreightWaves Now. I'm your host, Anthony Smith, and coming up, Michael Vincent's going to give us a shipper update. But first, we're going to go to Zach Strickland with a carrier update brought to you by PowerFleet. Stay tuned.
Everyone, and welcome to your Tuesday carrier update presented by PowerFleet. I'm Zach Strickland. And today we're looking at our tender volume index and tender rejection index going horizontal. We were retracting last week as tender rejection rates started to come down pretty significantly and volumes came down even more significantly over the last week. But now we seem to have hit a floor for the moment. Again, something we sort of anticipated as we're going through September. September is one of the stronger months of the year in terms of just staying stable and keeping volumes relatively on point heading into the fourth quarter, because this is when we see a lot of shipping peak season, a lot of freight coming off the ports. And again, this year's not any different in that regard, except for, of course, the increased volumes year over year, significant amount of that. If we look all the way back into 2019, tender rejection rates are probably, they're just hovering around that 25% mark for the moment. However, this does not tell us the full story looking at it broken down by mode. So we have our reefer rejection rate and our van tender rejection rate here in blue. So reefer rejections, keeping that number a little bit higher than it would normally be at 38.12%. Van rejection rates actually came down yesterday, roughly 29 basis points to 25.66%. So reefer rejections, interestingly, really starting to tighten up a little bit here over the last week or so, which is keeping that the overall rejection rate a little bit higher. Van rejections still very high at 25.6%, so it does not mean that the market is starting to loosen with any significance just yet. But reefer is definitely interesting as we enter September. This is not a seasonal move by any means. So looking at our weighted rejection index, a combination of our outbound tender market share and the weekly change in tender rejection rate to see where our most significant volumes with the most significant tender rejection rate change are in the United States right now. You can see Harrisburg, Allentown, up there in the northeastern corridor continue to stabilize as tender rejection rates come down in two of the largest markets in the country. Memphis, again, one of the larger markets in the country, a top 10 market for sure, showing in that red, meaning tender rejection rates coming down week over week. These are going to be areas that you're going to notice changes in the spot market rate. It's probably going to start to soften and loosen a little bit in these areas more significantly. Looking at Dallas as well as Fort Worth, starting to loosen as well, but not as much so as in Allentown and Harrisburg and Memphis. Houston still showing a little bit of tightness down there. And of course, we're having a weather event right now with tropical system Beta, creating a lot of flood problems down there. So certainly be careful across the I-10 corridor. Ontario, Los Angeles, of course, always a market of interest for carriers to make sure that they know what's going on out on the West Coast, starting to show a little bit of tightness week over week out there as well. Leading the list, though, Kansas City, Missouri, and the dark blue right in the middle of the country. Looking at Kansas City, Missouri right now, we've got reefer rejection rates. Again, a lot of reefer activity in the middle of the country, in the nation's heartland. So it's always important to look at the reefer rejection rates in the middle of the country and break these down. 52% rejection rate on the contracted reefer rejection rate in Kansas City right now. So carriers out there in the reefer market probably getting a pretty penny to move some freight out in Kansas City. Van rejection rates, no slouch either, at 31.29%. Well above the national average of 24.6%. So again, this market is probably one of the hotter markets in the United States right now. If you're a carrier operating out there, either reefer or van, you should be able to get a decent move out of there, especially on the spot market if it is a backhaul. Looking at reefer markets across the country, these are going to be the markets that we're going to focus on for looking to see, since we saw the reefer rejections going up, where's going to be my biggest opportunities if I'm a reefer carrier looking for some of that spot freight, getting a backhaul, etc. You see out here, we've got Milwaukee, Green Bay, Fort Wayne, a lot of the middle part of the country, Omaha, Des Moines, Fayetteville, Arkansas, Tulsa, Oklahoma, a lot of the middle section of the country right there around Kansas City, showing a lot of increase, a significant week over week increase in tender rejection rate. Kansas City, 0.7% as well. So any of these markets in green, do not go into the Northeast if you are a reefer carrier, because the spot rates, if you look over there in those red signs, a lot of that is in the Northeast as well as Arizona. And that'll do it for today's carrier update.
The comprehensive logistics offerings from PowerFleet cover in-cab ELD, fleet management, trailer tracking, cargo monitoring, and tracking other assets such as chassis and intermodal containers. Power up your operations with PowerFleet.
Hi, I'm Michael Vincent. Welcome to the shipper update. Let's jump into it. Outbound tender volumes, as Zach was talking, they came down a little bit after the holiday here. A pretty significant drop, but now they've stabilized. And we expect this throughout September, as September is traditionally a very strong month going into the holiday season. And we are showing no indications of this dropping off significantly moving forward. We expect it to stabilize, if not uptick a little bit, over the next couple months. Let's dig into it a little bit here and dig into this. So the green line is your long haul tender volumes. And you can see that it is actually an uptick over the last few days and is really leading the strength. So that's moving long haul across the country, which will then hit the regional markets and the local markets. As you can see, the tweeners in orange, mid haul in the purple, and then the yellow short haul are all trending down a little bit and then stabilizing, as long haul really is the one that is moving this forward at this particular time. So we expect to see the tweeners, mid haul, and short haul to start to pick up over the next couple weeks as the long haul gets into those regional markets. The outbound tender rejects still at 24.89 across the board of all modes. If we look at that, it is still significantly higher than 2018, which was anomalously high. But then over 2019, it was sitting at only 6%. So this time last year, it's only 6%. And right now, we're looking at 1 in every 4 are still being rejected. So pressure on rates is still high and continues throughout the September, obviously, and into the fall as we go into peak season here. When we look at outbound tender rejections, broke it down here. The blue is everything together, all modes at 24.89. And you can see that reefers at 38.12%. So if you're a refrigerated shipper or climate controlled shipper, you're seeing well over a third of the load tenders being rejected. So rates are very, very high and the pressure continues on that. And you can see a very steep increase over the last week in those rejections as we pick that up, as Zach mentioned, in the center of the country there, Kansas City, Joplin, Missouri, et cetera. Very, very strong volumes and outbound rejects on the refrigerated. Flatbed is what's pulling this down at 8.79. It continues to hover around that 9%, 8% to 9% rejection rate with no real upticks happening there. And you see that van has come down and now stabilized just over 25. So even in the van market, you're looking at 1 in 4 being rejected right now. So strong pressure there as well if you're a dry van shipper. When we look at this, we're looking at the rate per mile, and you can see the O-Tri and the outbound tender volumes have stabilized over here, and you can see the pressures in the flatbed, which is the 2.65, and then you're looking at van at 2.91 and reefer at 3.25 or 2.4, excuse me. So refrigerated shippers still seeing that high pressure and high rates. As we look at this, I showed this a little bit yesterday, the outbound tender volumes in this I-80 corridor here are still quite high in the blue. And you can see the raised section of it is actually the tender rejection. So we still continue to see these move. If I move forward here, here is the outbound tender rejects and the volatility index. What is happening here is these fluctuations, as Zach had talked, there's up and down in these markets. So the volatility is quite high in these markets, so watch it if you're a shipper.
And that's going to do it for this episode of FreightWaves Now. As always, you can check out our content on all your favorite streaming platforms, including Apple TV. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we're going to see you on the next episode.